On live the other day and somebody asked me if I had a directory of all of the content that I had across platforms, and unfortunately no. I wish I did. Sometimes I forget what I say as soon as I say it, but I thought I could at least give a summary of what I think is going on with the New Romantics and the story that I think they are telling. I do have some playlists that cover all of these things, but I have like 700 videos, so I do want to consolidate all of it into one little video. Is that possible? Probably not. I'm not going to include theories, just the basic story that I think is being told. And for anybody in the comments who wants to say we're moving the goalposts or this is a cope, anything like that because Taylor's getting married, any of that stuff, no, that has absolutely nothing to do with it. I've been talking about this exact same story that I think is being told for 3 years now. I haven't swerved, haven't changed, nothing. The only thing that's changed is the timeline because, hello, I'm not part of it. I can only guess. And the methods that they'll use. Otherwise, nothing has shifted since day one. So here's a summary. Lots of notes. We're going to go like bullet point style. So I think when Taylor transitioned from country music to pop music, she entered a whole new world and she encountered a lot of things that she wouldn't have normally. That transition is represented through I Knew You Were Trouble and We Are Never Getting Back Together. And 22 to a lesser extent. These things started happening during Speak Now era, which is also when she elevated to a new level of fame that she had never experienced before. I think something specific happened at the beginning of July 2011 and affected that 4th of July weekend. I think whatever happened is represented in All Too Well, likely an amalgamation of those experiences. I think whatever is represented in All Too Well ties back to the earliest parts of her career or even earlier. But the catalyst for the song and the deeper meaning and why it carries so much trauma is something that happened during Speak Now era. Once we find out what All Too Well is about, we will find out what the story is. All Too Well is linked to Speak Now because of that reason. I think Taylor bonded with One Direction over their shared experiences when they were doing that PR relationship, and they have been working together ever since behind the scenes. I think very early on when Taylor started hanging out with Victoria's Secret models and started working with Victoria's Secret, she discovered their connections to people like Les Wexner and what happens behind the scenes. That's where we start getting into the ties with Epstein. I think Taylor started to speak out and get louder about political issues in 1989, and the opposition realized how powerful she was and how much social currency that she had, and that contributed to her being canceled. I think that entire time that she was away during Reputation, she was building a plan to not only get back her career, but to plot revenge. She said she based that entire record off of Game of Thrones. I think the battle was on and she was ready to fight. I think most of Reputation is about this. I think Call It What You Want is a New Romantic song. I think So It Goes is about the plan that was going to be in motion. King My Heart and Gorgeous as well. I think she knew by early 2018 that she was going to likely be going somewhere else and that Scott was cheating behind the scenes. At the same time, she was going through her own SA trial and Me Too was happening and all of her friends were speaking out for Me Too as well. I think all of those shaped her experiences and pushed her to speak out and get loud in 2019. Remember, she was not only getting loud about politics, but she was getting loud about SA too, and things like Black Lives Matter. And then she was dealt the blow, her masters. I think at that point, Taylor had to make a choice. It was either this mission or her life's work, and she chose her life's work, and she has been battling with herself about that decision ever since. I think the glitch era started December 12th and 13th of 2019. I have a whole series about that I made back in October of 2023. Folklore and Evermore were the glitch, and also all of the albums since then, but those in particular, those were albums that were about the heartbreak that she experienced due to all of this stuff, like a culmination. I also think Evermore is somehow linked to Debut, and once we get the truth of what Evermore is really about, such as a long pond session, something like that, then that will shock and unlock a lot of things for everyone. I think Evermore is somehow also linked to Taylor and her family and the family tree, as well as politics. Maybe a history of the country. I'm not sure. There's a lot of history, roots, all that stuff. Evermore is really important. I think that karma is 3 parts. Karma is the action, like the consequences that people are going to get from the actions, but the project of karma and how we were going to get to karma, the music projects, were 3 parts. Midnights, TTPD, and I was debating over whether it would be TS13 or Evermore. My big theory was that we would still get music videos or some sort of visual project that links to Midnights. That's why the Midnights era has never ended. And that seeing the visual representation of what those songs are about would result in karma. Because we would get the full story and then people would get their karma, you know? I still low-key think that. I know that's delusional. I really do. Enter my Speak Now is coming back around theory. Speak Now coming back because that era is super important, and I can link another video about that, but that Speak Now represents speaking her truth, whatever that may be, whatever All Too Well is about, whatever she's experienced in her career, relationship, whatever it is that she feels like she needs to say, that's what that represents. I also said that that would never happen until she got her master's back because those are intrinsically connected. And here we are. Back in March, I said that I think exile ended March 2nd. And turns out Taylor took the pictures of reclaiming her master's towards the end of March. So she reclaimed her master's around that time or earlier. My very first video, I said the goal of the Eras era was to build up as much social capital and social currency as possible so that when she did want to speak out, she would have the most available impact, the most eyes on her, so people would understand and hear what she's saying. At the same time, making friends in low places. Maddie Healy was the beginning of that, I believe. See my earlier video about Pink Floyd to understand what I mean. Midnights was a clock and a calendar. Told us exactly what was going to happen. We just had to interpret it. Again, karma. Everything we're seeing is tied with Me Too, Time's Up, etc. It's all connected, and it all ties back to powerful men who do bad things, and that inevitably is tied to SA trafficking, etc. We've seen that play out since I started talking about this 3 years ago. Snow on the beach. She announced that last because that represents the people coming forward, whether it's people coming out, people coming forward with their stories, snowflakes, right? Snow on the beach, covering a beach, like the remnants of an atomic bomb. That's connected to the ski suit that she wore in 2019. I think it was Vogue, maybe? I think their intention is to rebuild the music industry, similar to the way that they did New Hollywood, where artists are in control, not labels. Last Great American Dynasty is about the truth of the American history. Black history is a part of that. That's why Kendrick's involved. And Cowboy Carter. The same story is being told over and over, weaved all throughout different mediums. Just like Louis Tomlinson said, a copy of a copy of a copy. Taylor's been telling the stories of herself and other artists combined since Midnights, at least, all in different ways. So much of the media released since COVID is connected. This involves blackmail, dead artists, the Grammys, and somehow her Spotify shares that were part of her contract. They took back country music because, in the end, country music is Betty and pop music was August. Call me crazy if you want, but if you sit back and think about it, it all makes sense. And I've continued to be proven right over and over, so get on board. Even that crazy once you think about it. That's why we call them the New Romantics. I'll link a couple videos below. Let me know what you think in the comments.